After waking up, a man and a woman both contemplate how they sometimes find themselves crying after waking up. Although they are unable to recall whatever they dreamed about, they cannot shake the feeling that they have lost something important. This spurs them on to keep searching for whatever it is that they lost day in and day out. The only certain thing they do remember is that it is linked to the day when a comet flew by really close, and it was a really beautiful sight to behold. One morning, the girl, whose name is Mitsuha, wakes up and finds herself very confused. What perplexes her the most is her own body, and she even starts touching herself to make sure she is not just seeing things. Suddenly, her little sister catches her in the act as she enters her room to call her to come eat breakfast. The following day, both her grandmother and her sister tell her how she behaved very strangely yesterday. Mitsuha wonders what they mean by that, but before she can inquire more, she is interrupted by a town broadcast from the town hall, reminding them of the upcoming mayoral election. Deciding to ignore the broadcast, they turn on the television instead, where they hear the news about the comet, which is scheduled to pass really close to Earth in 1 month's time, reminding everyone that they will be able to see it with the naked eye for a couple of days during that time. On her way to school, Mitsuha walks partway with her sister before joining her friends, Sayaka and Katsuhiko. What ends up worrying her is that both of them also tell her how she was acting strangely yesterday, almost as if she was possessed. Ultimately, Sayaka concludes that Mitsuha must be under a lot of stress. Eventually, they pass by an empty lot where the mayor, who happens to be Mitsuha's father, is holding a public relations campaign, speaking about the development of the town he is going to push for if he is re-elected. Once he spots Mitsuha, he uses the loudspeaker to remind her to maintain a healthy posture while walking, which only ends up embarrassing her among her peers, so she hurries on. During class, she finds out that someone wrote in her notebook, asking her who she is. Just as she is wondering who wrote that message, she gets called out by the teacher, who pokes fun at her being able to remember her name today. Still confused, Sayaka and Katsuhiko tell her that she was a complete mess yesterday, not knowing where her seat was, nor anything else for that matter. But Mitsuha has no recollection of that, only stating that she started having a strange dream recently, almost as if she is living someone else's life. Sayaka gets worried that it might be some sort of amnesia because of all the stress she is under. After all, she has a ceremony coming up soon. Being reminded about the ceremony makes Sayaka even more upset, and she wishes she could just leave this god-forsaken town in the middle of nowhere. Back home, her grandmother tells her a story about her ancestors while having her practice twinning threads. She tells them that their braided cords hold 1,000 years of their family's history. Unfortunately, 200 years ago, a great fire burned down all of the records, so all that remains is the traditions that were left behind, which is their duty to inherit and keep alive here at the Miyamizu Shrine. She gets upset that her son-in-law has no interest in preserving the tradition and has instead pursued a career in politics. The time for the ceremony is at hand, and the two sisters perform the ritual dance in front of the town, wearing the traditional shrine priestess outfits. They chew on some rice and then spit it out, collecting the liquid and then sealing it away with the cords they handcrafted before, in order to let it rest and ferment so it turns into sake. Apparently, it is the oldest sake in the world, and creating it is a very important tradition for their family. But Mitsuha only ends up getting embarrassed because some of her classmates saw her do it. On her way home, she yells out how she hates living here and wishes to be a hot guy who lives in Tokyo in her next life. The phone alarm rings, waking up a high school boy named Taki from his slumber. He rolls out of the bed and immediately becomes confused when he realizes that he is in a place which he does not recognize. Even more so when he looks in the mirror and becomes astonished by his appearance. After an awkward interaction with his father, who quickly leaves for work, he gets ready for school and exits his apartment, shocked by the revelation that he is in Tokyo. Using his phone to navigate around the city, he manages to find his way to the school he attends, although not before noon. His friends, Tsukasa and Shinta, spot him and drag him to eat lunch together with them, but they quickly notice how he is acting strangely, almost as if he is a different person. When they invite him to a cafe after school, he gets very excited to join them. But as they are snacking, he gets a notification on his phone and realizes that he is late for his part-time job. Much to the surprise of his friends, he does not seem to know where it is that he works. Luckily for him, they know, so he manages to find the place, which is a restaurant where he is a waiter. He has a hard time keeping up with his duties, almost as if it is his first day, making his co-workers reprimand him over and over again. When a troublesome customer starts making fake claims about the food he was served, Taki does not know how to handle it properly, so his senior at work, a beautiful university student named Mickey, steps in to defuse the situation. Although everything is resolved without an incident, when their shift ends they realize that the customer cut up Mickey's skirt. Taki quickly steps in to help her out and takes her to the changing room, where he takes her skirt and sews it up like a pro, even creating a cute decoration out of the stitches. Mickey ends up getting impressed by this and tells him how she likes his feminine side. On his way home, Taki thinks about how this was a very detailed dream and ends up browsing through his phone, finding a lot of pictures of Mickey. Then he starts thinking about himself in third person, concluding that he must have a crush on her, so he leaves behind a note in the phone in which he explains what happened today between him and Mickey. As he does that, he remembers the message from the notebook, revealing that the person in Taki's body is in fact Mitsuha, as she writes down her name on his palm to answer his question. When Taki wakes up on the following day, he is confused by the name written down on his palm, and the confusion only keeps increasing as he reads the note left behind in his phone. When he talks with his friends, he learns that he was behaving quite strangely yesterday, and when he arrives at work, his colleagues jump on him, upset that he started getting closer with Mickey before they did. On the other end, when Mitsuha wakes up, she finds even more writing on her entire arm. Just as she is inspecting those, her sister enters her room and asks her if she is not going to fondle her breasts today again. This is quite the shock to hear for Mitsuha, but not as much of a shock as the one she gets when she hears what she did the day before in school. It turns out that she kicked over a table when she overheard some of her classmates gossiping about her behind her back. Thinking back on everything that happened, both Taki and Mitsuha come to the realization at the same time, namely that they are swapping bodies with each other. It seems to happen at random when they go to sleep, and only a few times every week. Both of them immediately write down important notes and rules for the other to make sure they do not mess up each other's lives. Despite the notes, it falls really hard on both of them to keep up with what the other is used to doing on a regular basis. Mitsuha ends up pushing Taki towards a relationship with Mickey, while on the other hand Taki becomes extremely popular with both guys and girls when he is in Mitsuha's body, getting lots of love letters from them. This agitates both of them, as neither of them seems to be interested in a relationship, so they end up arguing through their notes. One day Taki wakes up in Mitsuha's body when her grandmother takes her and her sister to the shrine they watch over. Their destination is deep in the mountains, and during their journey she tells the two of them about their guardian deity, which is called Musubai. Apparently the word Musubai is ancient and has a lot of different meanings, such as bringing threads together, bringing people together, and even the passage of time itself. Their deity's power extends over all of those things, and she notes how the braided cords they make symbolize the passage of time. When they finally reach their destination, Taki sees what the main body of the shrine is, where the deity allegedly resides. It is a small stone cave in the middle of a beautiful, serene field, located in what seems to be a natural crater. Grandmother tells them how they need to leave the offering of the sake they made during the ritual in that cave, as it binds the deity to that location, and in return to them, explaining how they put their own essence into creating it, which is the reason the binding works. Taki realizes how important this must be to them, so he does exactly as instructed, taking all of her grandmother's words to heart. When they leave the offering and return to grandmother, it is already getting late, and the sun is setting. With the twilight around them, Taki is suddenly surprised to hear the grandma reveal how she knows that Mitsuha is currently dreaming. At that moment he wakes up back in his own body. He finds himself crying but does not know why, and that thought is quickly pushed away as he sees that he is about to have a date with Mickey. He rushes to the location where they are supposed to meet and just barely manages to get there in time. Meanwhile, Mitsuha finds herself back in her own body, bummed out that she did not get to go on a date with Mickey. But then she looks at herself in the mirror and realizes that she is crying, even though she is not sure why. Taki, on the other hand, is struggling to remain composed on his date. Checking his phone, he finds some tips for the date left behind by Mitsuha, but it mostly seems to be her poking fun of him for needing them. When Taki walks by a set of pictures, he gets completely sidetracked by one of them, which resembles the sight scene from the town where Mitsuha lives. When Mickey sees him like that, she realizes that she is not the main focus of his attention and decides that it would be best to end their date. Before they part ways, she tells him that she believes that he used to have a crush on her in the past, but it seems that he has found someone else that he likes now. Even though Taki denies that, she does not believe him and bids him goodbye. Checking his phone again, He sees that Mitsuha said how they should be able to see the comet passing in the sky above by the time their date comes to a close. Confused by that, Taki looks up at the sky and sees nothing out of the ordinary, wondering what she was talking about. Checking his contacts, he finds Mitsuha's number in it and gives her a call. Mitsuha gets a phone call, but instead of Taki it is Katsuhiko, calling her to come to the festival and join him and Sayaka as they will be able to watch the comet together. Although a bit reluctant, she decides to come and shocks them by revealing that she has a new haircut. While her friends try to figure out why she cut her hair short, she interrupts them and tells them to look at the sky, as there is a beautiful sight of the comet flying close by, with a large tail trailing behind it. At that moment a piece of the comet breaks off and starts falling down towards the ground, getting closer and closer to them. Taki's call goes unanswered as the automated message tells him how the number he has dialed is not in service. He figures he will tell Mitsuha all about the failed date next time they swap, but that day does not come. Days turn into weeks and he never experiences the body swap again, so he becomes determined to find the location of her town solely on what he knew and saw about it, drawing sketches of the mountain ranges and the sights from memory, while searching the internet about any clues where those could align. One day he packs all of his sketches and decides to set out on a journey to try and find Mitsuha's village. Just as he is about to board the train out of Tokyo, he is intercepted by Miki and Tsukasa. They have noticed his change in behavior recently and have decided to join him in order to keep an eye on him. It turns out that they think he has met someone over the internet, so now he is going to meet her. Imagine the surprise when he tells them that he does not actually know where the person lives, and that the only thing he has to go on are the sketches he drew. They search all over the countryside, asking the locals about the scenery from the drawings, but to no success. While having dinner at a remote family-run ramen shop, Taki is ready to call it quits, stating how this was a bad idea in the first place. Suddenly, the waitress working there recognizes the drawing he has on the table, revealing that the name of the town he drew is Itamori. Her husband quickly chimes in and affirms the idea, stating that the drawing is the spitting image of that place. Hearing that, Taki gets excited, but his excitement is short-lived, as it turns out that town no longer exists. Seeing how confused Taki is, the owner of the ramen shop offers to drive them there as it is nearby. When they arrive at their destination, it becomes evident what happened. The place where Itamori used to be is now completely destroyed thanks to the comet which flew by. One large chunk split off from it and hit right where the town used to stand, wiping out everything and killing almost everyone who used to live there. It takes a while for Taki to process that, as he was just exchanging notes with Mitsuha a few weeks ago. When he pulls out the phone to show everyone the notes, they suddenly start disappearing until all of them are gone. Returning to an inn to stay the night, Taki, Miki, and Tsukasa gather whatever information they can find on the disaster, and when they find the book holding the names of all who died in it, Taki is devastated to learn that Mitsuha is among those confirmed dead, as well as her family and friends. Being unable to comprehend what he experienced, he starts thinking how this was all a delusion he had and his memory just made up a story from what he saw in the news. In one of the books about Itamori, Miki finds notes about the traditional braided cords they used to make there, noting how he always wears one such cord around his wrist. When his attention is directed towards it, he says how he got it from someone in the past, but he cannot remember who it was, despite that he still wears it like a lucky charm. At that moment he remembers what Mitsuha's grandmother told him on their way to the shrine, stating how those cords represent the flow of time itself. This gives him an idea and he starts looking up on the map of the local area to try and find where the location of the shrine is. While doing so he falls asleep, but Mitsuha's voice calling out to him snaps him awake and he packs his things, leaving behind a note to Miki and Tsukasa, telling them how he has to do this on his own. He convinces the ramen shop owner to give him a ride to Itamori once again. The owner is happy to oblige, even giving him a bento box for lunch, as he was touched by the amazing sketch of Itamori he drew. And so, Taki starts exploring the nearby mountainside, looking for the shrine. Pushing on despite the sudden downpour of rain, he manages to find the path he walked as Mitsuha and locates the ancient cave. Entering the shrine, he finds the offerings of Seiki left behind inside of it when he was in Mitsuha's body, one belonging to her, and the other to her sister. He quickly opens up Mitsuha's bottle, reasoning that the timelines were offset, and the Mitsuha he knew was from 3 years ago. Pouring himself a cup of the sake she made during the ritual ceremony, he quickly drinks it and prays to Musubai, asking for a chance to save her. When he finishes the cup, he ends up slipping on the wet ground and falls backwards. Looking up, he sees that there is an ancient drawing of the same incident with the comet on the ceiling of the cave. At that moment, the sake he drank takes effect and he starts feeling like he is endlessly falling, with Mitsuha's memories passing by him, while the braided cord tied to his wrist seems to be leading him in the right direction. He sees the moment she was born and first saw her mother. Then he sees how her mother died of a sickness, which devastated her father and made him estranged with the Miyamizu shrine. He also sees all of the memories from when they started swapping bodies and up to the moment a piece from the comet comes crashing down upon her. At that moment he wakes up, once again in Mitsuha's body. Overcome by emotions, he starts crying, while still touching himself to confirm that he is not dreaming. This scares Mitsuha's sister, who walks in on the scene, so she rushes off to school alone. Taki turns on the televisions, confirming that it is the day when the disaster is going to happen. Taking a sigh of relief, he starts thinking of what he could do to prevent it, when Mitsuha's grandmother walks in on him. However, she can immediately tell that it is not Mitsuha who is in front of her right now. Taki is surprised by how she could tell, to which she reveals that this sort of thing happened to her in the past too. Although she has completely forgotten who or what she dreamed about when she was younger, she does remember having really strange, vivid dreams at one point in her life. Not only her, but Mitsuha's mother as well. Taki reasons that this must be something shared within the Miyamizu lineage, and it could be leading up to what will happen today. He tells her that the comet will strike at Itamori and that everyone will die, but she tells him that no one will believe such a story. This does not shake Taki's resolve, and he hurries off to school in order to get Mitsuha's friends. While the two of them are shocked by Mitsuha's sudden change in hairstyle, Taki wastes no time, telling them to skip school and come help him save the town. Although they are having a hard time following her story about the comet, they still go along with her and start making preparations. Thanks to Katsuhiko and Taki's combined brainstorming power, they come up with a plan. They plan to set off a bomb in order to knock out the town's power supply, and then use the local emergency broadcast system to direct everyone to seek shelter in the high school, as Taki knows that this is the only area which will not be destroyed by the blast. While Katsuhiko takes care of procuring the explosives from his father's construction company, Sayaka will have to stand by and use the broadcast room in the school to send out the emergency message when the power goes out. Taki will go and convince Mitsuha's father to help out with the evacuation as well. When Sayaka hears the plan, she starts getting cold feet, telling them that what they are going to do will get them in too much trouble, especially since they are acting without any evidence. But Katsuhiko is completely on board, showing Sayaka that he did some research on the comet after what he heard from Mitsuha, and it turns out the comet did exactly what she describes last time it flew by, over 1,000 years ago. In addition to that, the location of their town is exactly where the piece that fell off last time hit the earth. Taki then realizes that this is what the drawing in the cave described, and that the crater around it was created when it last hit the ground. But things do not go according to plan when Taki gets to talk with Mitsuha's father. Despite Mitsuha being his daughter, he does not listen to her in the slightest and immediately dismisses what she says, telling her to get herself checked out in the hospital to make sure she is right in the head. This pisses Taki off and he almost assaults Mitsuha's father, which is so out of character for Mitsuha that her own father starts doubting that she is Mitsuha. Feeling dejected by the lack of support from the mayor's side, Taki makes his way back to Mitsuha's home. On his way, he runs into her sister and her friends. He tries to tell them to not go to the festival tonight, but seeing how frantic she is behaving, they only get spooked and run away. Her sister wonders what is wrong with her, mentioning that first she went to Tokyo yesterday, and now this. Hearing that she went to Tokyo surprises Taki, and he suddenly gets the feeling that Mitsuha is at the shrine. Katsuhiko and Sayaka also come to meet up with her, asking her how the talks with the mayor went. But instead of talking with them, Taki grabs Katsuhiko's bicycle and tells them to continue with the plan. While he hurries on towards the shrine, Mitsuha wakes up in Taki's body, quickly realizing that she is in the shrine and wonders what he was doing here. When she walks out of the shrine and climbs the hill of the crater surrounding it, she gets a view of her town, or at least of where it used to be, as it is now completely destroyed. At that moment she remembers everything and realizes that she is actually dead. Taki is pushing the bicycle to its limits, pedaling up the mountain to reach Mitsuha, the feeling that she is at the shrine only growing inside of him. Then he remembers something that happened 3 years ago. It turns out that Mitsuha decided on a whim to go visit him in Tokyo, despite not knowing how to find him. She was very anxious about the prospect of meeting him, but despite that, she really wanted to take the chance and do so anyway. When she arrived in Tokyo, she tried calling him, but the number would not connect, so she resorted to checking all the spots she used to pass through while in his body, hoping that she will run into him. Somewhere deep down, she hoped that they would be able to meet and recognize each other at first glance, and more than that he would be happy to see her. Just as she was about to quit, she suddenly saw him at a train station and quickly boarded his train. Mustering her courage, she got in front of him, and after confirming that this is really Taki, she spoke up. But when she called out his name, he only asked who she is. This response cut her deeply, and she simply apologized for bothering him. The train pulled in on its next stop, and Mitsuha decided to quickly get off, but as she was getting off, Taki spoke up, asking her to tell him her name. She quickly yells out her name and hands him the braided cord she always used to tie her hair with, the same braided cord he kept as a lucky charm all this time, before she is swept away with the crowd. On his way up the mountain, Taki ends up crashing Katsuhiko's bicycle, but he still presses on, determined to reach the shrine before it is too late, crying when he realizes that she had found him 3 years ago. Arriving at the crater, Taki yells out Mitsuha's name, and she can hear him. She yells out in response, and the same goes for Taki. But despite being able to hear each other, they are unable to see. They run around, trying to find each other, and when they pass by each other, they get a feeling that they are close and stop, trying, but still failing, to grab a hold of their hands. They are saddened by that realization, but the sadness disappears quickly as the sun sets and twilight rolls in. In that short time frame, reality bends and they can finally, properly meet each other. Mitsuha returns to her body, while Taki is back in his own, and both of them are overjoyed to see each other at long last. He tells her that he came to find her, but it was really hard because she was so far away. Mitsuha cannot help but wonder how this is possible, knowing that she died on that day. Taki reveals that he drank her sake, which makes her completely embarrassed, and she calls him a pervert for drinking that, and not to mention feeling up her chest when he was in her body. Taki starts apologizing, which causes her to notice her braided cord around his wrist. When she asks him about it, he takes it off and returns it to her, telling her how he kept it for the past 3 years, but she should have it back now. Mitsuha quickly wraps the cord around her hair once again, asking him how it looks on her. When he fails to give her a proper compliment and apologizes after getting called out for it, both of them burst into a hearty laugh. Taki proceeds to tell her what he prepared to save the townspeople, and what is left for her to do next. And when they notice that twilight is about to turn into the night, he comes up with a great idea. He takes a marker and writes on her palm, before handing it over to her, telling her to write down each other's names to make sure they do not forget them. She quickly agrees, but before she can write anything, night sets in and she disappears. Taki swears that no matter where she is in the world, he will find her again, and he still remembers her name. But just as he is repeating her name over and over again, it suddenly disappears from his memories. He remembers that he came here to meet someone important to him, someone he cannot afford to lose, but he fails to remember who it is. This brings tears to his eyes and he starts yelling out, asking what her name is, but there is no response other than his own echo. Mitsuha dashes down the mountain towards the power station. Along the way, she keeps repeating Taki's name to make sure she does not forget it. Katsuhiko arrives shortly thereafter, bringing explosives with him. He asks her one last time if she is sure that the comet will hit them, and when she tells him that she saw it with her own eyes, that is all the confirmation he needs to proceed with the plan. They call Sayaka and tell her to start with the broadcast when the emergency power kicks in. After planting the charges, they use Katsuhiko's scooter to drive back to town. Along the way, the explosives go off, startling the townspeople and sinking the town into darkness. At that moment, the emergency broadcast system kicks in and Sayaka starts broadcasting the evacuation alert. The town hall gets flooded by phone calls, and the major wonders just what is going on. Meanwhile, Katsuhiko and Mitsuha arrive at the festival grounds and start urging the people to hurry towards the school in order to get to safety. Suddenly, Mitsuha stops and starts crying, telling Katsuhiko that she can no longer remember the name of someone important to her. Confused by what she means, he snaps her out of it and tells her that she has more important things to worry about right now than someone's name, turning her attention towards the people in need of evacuation. The town hall manages to pinpoint the source of the broadcast and they quickly send people to stop it, while taking Sayaka into custody. Once they confirm that there is no actual emergency, they release a new broadcast, urging people to stay where they are and not to panic. Katsuhiko's father also finds Katsuhiko and puts an end to his yelling at the festival grounds, wondering just what has gotten into him. But at that moment he looks up and notices exactly what Mitsuha foretold, as a piece of the comet breaks off, followed by a bunch of other, smaller chunks that start falling straight down towards them. This phenomena is picked up quickly all over the world, and countless people watch the beautiful sight in the sky, most astronomers predicting that it is highly unlikely for it to hit a settlement. Seeing this on the news, Taki from 3 years ago steps out of his father's apartment and takes a direct look at it, watching it fall in the distant sky. Mitsuha is dashing towards the town hall, hoping that she can convince her dad to help with the evacuation. Her mind is clouded with a desperate desire to remember Taki's name,